Hello everyone, welcome to another tutorial for Papericious. Now today we are going to be using some of the Papericious new release products, the white chippies. So these are the sentiment chippies, the new vellum cardstock which comes in a set of 10 sheets. The size of the sheets is A4 and these are 180 GSM. And they're all white, so you can color them, and we'll be sharing a few fun techniques of using these. And today we're going to be making a few cards, and for these we'll also be using a few pattern papers from some previous collections. So for our first card we're using the Papericious monochrome paper pack, and the last time we used this we made an album. You can check the post, we'll add it in the description box below. And from that we had a few scrap pieces left. So basically we had made our photo mats where we'd used white cardstock and then cut pattern paper and adhered it onto it. So we're using one of that scrap, and like you can see we don't throw anything. All of these tiny strips can be later used. So the size of the cardstock is 4 3/4 inches by 6 inches, and the size of the pattern paper inside is 4.5 inches by 5 3/4 inches. So that's how it has been matted. So we're using this for our panel for the card, and apart from that, of course, the vellum. So what we've done is we've taken a piece of vellum and run it through our die cut machine using a decorative die, and this is what we've got. So that's the pattern cut out on vellum, and this vellum is thick enough, and that's the reason why you can use your metal dies and run it through your Big Shot or any other die cutting machine and have a nice pattern. So for our first card, this is what we're going to use. Apart from that, from a scrap piece of the floral sheet in the paper pack, we fussy cut some flowers for our focal element, and we'll be using the white chippy love as our sentiment for this card. Also, we have this clear transparent acetate sheet here for our layering. So now the first step is, so this die cut measures 4 inches by 6 inches, and that's the reason why we picked out the scrap, and it's going to be easy to layer it. But before that, the first step is to stick down the piece of vellum onto this acetate sheet. So for that, we'll just use some tacky glue. So we've glued it to one extreme end, and we forgot to tell you, the size of the acetate sheet is slightly bigger, so that's 5 by 6 inches to give us a fold so that we can stick our pattern paper. With that down in place, now we're just going to score the other end, the leftover acetate sheet end, because we need this to be the front of our card. So the first score mark will be exactly at the edge of the vellum, where the vellum ends. So that would be at about 4.1 inches. So with that done, now we have a nice fold here where we can glue down our pattern paper piece. So this is just going to be a front panel, and we can apply two-way tape here and then add our piece here. So the fold, the extra space that we left at the acetate sheet, goes all the way behind our cardstock. So once you glue it down, nicely burnish it with your bone folder to sort of loosen the acetate and make it all stick down. So that forms the front of our card. And now all we need to do is add our sentiment and our focal element. So we just add our flowers on the front, and the sentiment can go inside or outside. So we'll use some foam tape to uproot the flowers just for some nice added dimension.
हेलो, गुड मॉर्निंग, कैसे हो दीदी? हाँ जी, ठीक हूँ। बैग ला रही हूँ। हाँ जी।
So for the sentiment, we decided that we can use some glue and the Papericious new Twinkling spark just to add a little bit of that extra glitter to our card. So in that way, we have some nice shine and glitter at a few places, and we're ready to stick down our sentiment. So again with glue, and that completes our first card. So you can see that effect, and you can see how just very few elements have been used here. It's just 2 sheets of pattern paper where one is used as a print and one to fussy cut these flowers. The vellum is our focal with that nice detail of die cut and a white chippy. So that completes our monochromatic black and white card. For the next card, we decided to use the Indie Chick pattern paper collection, and we're using the pink cardstock from the same paper collection. Now this cardstock is cut to 10 inches by 7 inches, and on the 10 inches side scored at 5 inches for the base. And we took one of the pattern papers from the pack and trimmed it down to 4.5 by 6.5 inches, so that can form our base for the card. So first, let's just glue down this onto our card base. Now in our stash, we have this Kaisercraft die, which is called the Hanami flower, and the best part about it is it gives us a nice cut with gaps in all of these petals. So we thought this would be really fun to use with the vellum. So we used the remaining piece of the white cardstock and die cut the flowers. And now what we plan to do is just stick this down onto the vellum sheet and fussy cut around that. So with that done, that's a look at our floral cluster. And now we're just going to use some double-sided tape right in the center of the flowers to uproot it. We'll add that to the base, and again we're using one of the white chippies for our sentiment of the card. It says you and me. These are so beautiful that you can just retain them as they are and you don't have to color them. So we stick that down, and from the paper pack we'll add this cute little butterfly to complete our card. So with that done, our second card is now complete. And again, the concept being clean and simple, not too many elements, and we love how the vellum peeks through the flower, and also there's a slight tint to it from underneath the paper. So for our next card, we decided to do some stamping and coloring on the vellum. So cut a piece of vellum which is about 4 3/4 inches by 6 inches, and we're using a MISTI tool to get a nice clear stamped image. So the stamp that we're using is this floral cluster from Alteneu Just Because stamp set, and we'll be using Ranger black tie pigment ink to stamp it. We'll also be using the new Papericious embossing powder clear just to heat set that and to complete the card. And for our cardstock base, we'll use a blue color or a pink color, let's decide, from the Indie Chick collection, since that's accessible at the moment. So first, let's stamp our image. While our ink is still wet, and that's another reason why we chose this pigment ink, we'll add our embossing powder. Now using a heat tool, let's heat set it. With that done, now we have a nice image and it's a little embossed with that effect. And now we're just going to color it with some zig markers and water brush to give it a nice watercolor effect. So choose your colors and just go in and color however you wish to. So in this case, we're using our zig markers. So with that done, now the image is colored on the vellum, and now all we need to do is mount it on a piece of cardstock. So the pink cardstock would look really good. So cut a card base and just stick down this vellum panel. So the base measures 5 by 6.5 when folded. So that's 10 by 6.5 scored at 5. So we used liquid glue to stick it down because we wanted to use washi tape as a border all around. But otherwise you can always use two-way tape or glue dots to stick your vellum down neatly. So we're just going to run our washi tape all around and give this panel a nice border. So that now looks complete, and all we need to do is add our sentiment. So again, the white chippies, and that will complete our card. So here you can see how we've used the vellum and colored our image after stamping it. So that's our third card complete. For our next card, we've gone ahead and stamped this Delightful Daisies stamp from the Heartfelt Creations collection, and we used the same black pigment ink and sprinkled some of the Papericious embossing powder clear and heat set it. So that is the look at our stamped images. So now we're going to color these and then run them through a die cut machine using the coordinated die and cut these and shape them into flowers. So to color these, again we're using Ranger die ink pads, and we decided to color the flowers a blue and purple tone and the leaves a green tone. Just using some sponge, we'll color this. So to begin with, we'll start from a lighter shade and just go around the entire surface. So here we're not worried about coming out of the flowers because any which ways, using the die, we're going to cut it all out. This is a very easy technique of coloring any vellum stamped image. which will eventually cut out. So next, now we'll go in with our second shade of blue. And like you can see, we're just going in center outwards so that we get some gradation and it looks like we've shaded the flower. And lastly, in the center now, we'll go in with some purple tone. So that will further add some dimension and giving it a nice natural look. So with those colored now, we'll just pass it through the big shot and be back with the cutouts. With our cutouts ready, we're just going to use our flower shaping kit and shape these flowers. So to begin shaping, keep the flower face down on the shaping folder, the foam, and using a ball tool, gently press on each petal out to inwards. So basically starting from the tip, moving inwards. So that shapes the petal, and turn it back face up and gently circle at the center to give it nice depth and dimension. So that's the easiest way of shaping your flower. Now in the same way you can shape your leaves as well, just pressing down with the ball tool on the back and then turning it and pressing some more, so that just gives it a nice naturalistic look. So with that done, the shaping is complete, and now all we have to do is assemble the layers of the flower, just adding a dot of glue right in the middle. Place the second layer and using your ball tool, press down firmly to stick it down. So while working with this vellum, we've realized that it's pretty sturdy. The thickness of the vellum is really great for flower shaping, so we didn't have to really worry so much about the pressure we use with our tools, and we just did as we would ordinarily do, and there has been no tear so far. So this vellum is fabulous for your flowers. We'll complete our flower centers by just adding a little glue and some beads or petals. It's up to you, whatever you have, you could use that. You could also just leave them as it is, but it just gives it a nice naturalistic look. So we'll just add some more glitter to these flowers and leaves using the Papericious Twinkling Spark. So now our flowers are complete, and we need to create a base to adhere these. So because we were very happy with the way the vellum turned out while shaping these flowers, we decided to experiment, and we cut a piece of vellum which is about roughly 5 inches by 6 inches, and used an embossing folder and ran it through a big shot. And that is the lovely effect that we've achieved. So the vellum can be embossed too, and it looks so stunning and spectacular that we don't need anything else now for our base. So we are using a blue cardstock piece from the Indie Chick collection, slightly bigger than the vellum piece, so that's 5.5 by 6.5 inches when folded, 6.5 by 11 scored at 5.5. And now all we got to do is mount this vellum base for which this time we'll use some glue dots just on the corners or around the edges and adhere this to our base. So for this one, we changed our mind. Instead of using the white chippies, we thought we could use the word dream from the Indie Chick paper pack. So we're just going to cut that out. And let's just play around with our arrangement and glue the flowers down the way we like them. So with that, our arrangement is now complete and we have everything down in place, and that completes our fourth card. And we're not yet done. We have one more card for you all. Yes, you heard it right. So we're just going to share another vellum technique card before we end this tutorial. So for our final card, we're using a piece of vellum cut at 5 by 6 inches, and we're going to play with distress oxides in 2 shades of green. And we're not going to cover the entire surface but just half of it. So starting with one color, that's cracked pistachio, and moving on to peeled paint. So with just this much ink on our vellum, we're going to use a stamp and do some embossing on the colored part. So with that embossed, it's kind of very clear. The white ink didn't really show up, so you could also just use Versamark and do that. And now we're going to go in with a third distress oxide color over this completely and see how that embossed stamp image resists through that. So going in with broken china again from the edges. And going back in with the peeled paint tone. So that way we have a nice blue-green multi-toned layer. And you can see how that embossing resists and the stamped image nicely pops up. Next, we're just going to add a few water droplets, just splatter water randomly because oxides react with water. So that is the look at the vellum panel, and we just trimmed it down slightly from the edges. So we've trimmed it to 3¼ inches by 6 inches. And we're using the remaining blue cardstock from the previous base, so that is 5½ by 6. That's 12 and scored at 6, and this will be a top opening card. So now we want to adhere this vellum panel in the center of the card, and we'll be using one of the white chippies for this particular card and some fussy cut elements from the sheet that comes in the Indie Chick paper pack. So we stamped our sentiment onto the white chippy with the same distress oxide ink, and to complete the card we're using some of the Papericious sequence mix. Now with that, our last and final card is also complete. So with that done, our 5 cards are ready, and we're quickly just going to show you each one of these to show you how beautiful they look, as well as just a recap of the different ways we've used the Papericious Vellum in our tutorial today, along with the white chippies and some pattern paper and cardstock. So that completes our tutorial for today. Hope you've enjoyed and are inspired to start creating your own cards or different projects using these techniques that we've shared today. Until our next time, take care, and do subscribe, like and share, and see you soon. Bye bye.